Hello and welcome to episode 52 of Triumph Beyond Trauma. I'm your host, Rosie Skeen, and today we are talking about one of my favorite topics, food. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to take a moment to remind you about my program, the First Responder Mental Wellness Method. This is a 12-week online program I created specifically for first responders, veterans, and frontline workers who carry heavy stress and trauma in their daily lives. In the program, we start by laying a solid foundation, helping you understand your stress response, how it works, how it affects your body and mind. And from there, I guide you through breathwork, yoga, and mindfulness practices designed to gently bring your nervous system back into balance and build real resilience. It is practical, easy to follow, and made to fit around your busy life and shift work. Whether you're just starting your mental wellness journey or looking for new ways to manage stress, this program is all about helping you feel calmer, more grounded, and stronger inside and out. If that sounds like something that you need right now, head over to tacticalyogaaustralia.com to learn more and to join us. All right, now let's get into this week's episode. Ever since she was little, Jess Wilson has been great at two things: doing hard stuff and inspiring others. And what she didn't realize then was that these gifts would shape her life's purpose. When her children were born, Jess faced the toughest challenge she's ever known. Both her boys were very sick, and what should have been a time of joy became a 4-year battle against a medical system that often left her feeling powerless and nearly broke her family. But in those darkest moments, fueled by fierce determination and an unshakable belief that there's always a way, Jess discovered the healing power of food. Slowly, her family's world began to turn around. Along the way, Jess learned powerful truths. The human body is incredibly resilient. Taking responsibility for your health is the most courageous choice you can make, and though we are not invincible, we can heal. She's also learned that leading with love starts by loving yourself. Today, Jess is a functional nutritionist, expert gut and hormone practitioner, and inspiring keynote speaker. She's also a busy mum, ocean lover, and runner who embraces life, often flying by the seat of her pants. Her mission is simple: to help you put yourself back together, find your health again, and show you that this one big, beautiful life is absolutely worth living, fully, vibrantly, and with joy. Let's get stuck into episode 52 with Jess Wilson. Welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma, the podcast that explores journeys of resilience and hope. I'm Rosie Skeen, a yoga and breathwork teacher and founder of Tactical Yoga Australia. As a former soldier's wife, mum to 3 beautiful kids, and a medically retired New South Wales police officer with PTSD, I understand the challenges of navigating mental health in the first responder and veteran community. Join us for incredible stories from individuals who've confronted the depths of mental illness and discovered their path to happiness and purpose, as well as solo episodes and expert discussions. Together, we'll uncover the tools to help you navigate your journey toward a brighter, more fulfilling life. Whether you're looking for helpful insights, practical tips, or just a friendly reminder that you're not alone, Triumph Beyond Trauma has got your back. You matter, and your journey to a happier, more meaningful life starts right here. Jess, welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma. So great to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I love food. It's probably one of my greatest loves, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I would love if you could share with us your journey into nutrition.
Amazing. Well, I think the first thing is growing up in South Africa, my mum was the hippie. She drove a VW Beetle and she baked her own bread and she grew her own veggies. And we were really, really poor growing up. Like, we lived in a converted garage. She would make lemonade to sell at the flea markets on the weekend. And back then, I think convenience food was the expensive stuff. And we just simply couldn't afford it. So growing up, I think I had a really good grassroots introduction to whole foods and nutrition anyway, simply just because of our status. Growing up, and you'll resonate with this, Rosie, I was a classic high achiever, straight A student, incidentally head of the public speaking committee, international athlete in like 2 disciplines. I was just go, go, go all the time, foot on the gas. And the interesting thing about that is when you are someone that is a high achiever, and your first responders will really resonate with this, it's a buzz, right? You get validated for how much you do and how much you achieve and how well you cope under pressure. And it's very type A. So I had my foot on the gas for a number of years growing up. And I think back then there really wasn't any kind of education or even awareness to check in with your body, to realize when you're breaking down, whether it's mentally or physically. We just weren't given those tools. And in my 20s, I moved to New Zealand to a place called Queenstown. I'm sure there's many people that know about Queenstown. And then in my 20s, I was still working full time and high achieving, and I was still training 6 hours a day and putting my body through the ringer. But I was also partying, right?
Yeah,
So I was
okay.
doing all the things that we all did in our 20s. And I remember looking back now, there were signs of my body and my mental health breaking down, but really not understanding at the time what that looked like or what that meant. But when I was 30, I'd moved back to Australia with my now ex-husband, and we decided to have children. And it was on the day that my first son was born. My boys were born just over a year apart, so nearly twins. It was on the day that my first son was born that really my whole world just imploded, because one of the things that you don't realize when you set out to have children is that you might not be given healthy ones.
Yeah.
I found myself in the space of just over 12 months with two boys who were incredibly, incredibly sick, and nobody knew what was wrong with them. And we spent 5 years in the medical system with me desperately fighting for answers for their health. They were just so sick every day, respiratory problems, gut problems, breathing problems, immune system problems. There was just never a day where they were well. We were constantly in the emergency department, in the hospitals, in the doctor's offices. And the whole way through, I was told that they were fine, that this was normal. And I think so many of our listeners are going to resonate with this, because there's a term for that now. It's called medical gaslighting.
Yeah.
And we've seen it a lot in the mental health space, right? But you also see it in the physical health space, where you might go, and I love doctors, but you might go to your doctor and say, I really feel like there's something not right. And they'll say, well, your bloods are fine.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yes.
so, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so when we're constantly dismissed and we're constantly gaslit, I was living on 3 hours of sleep a night. My boys had 18 surgeries in the space of 2 years,
Wow.
with everyone trying to have a go at what they thought might be wrong. There were multiple medical procedures that were done on them. Every week we were going through medical trauma, many of them without my consent or me being physically removed from the room. And just so much trauma. And mentally, just to be consistently told, you're the problem. There's nothing wrong with your kids. This is normal. You're just a paranoid, mother. It was really hard. And what I always say to people, when you are at the bottom of the barrel and you're backed into a corner and everything is very dark and the world is against you, you have two choices in that moment. You can fold to the narrative, to the system, to what you're being told, to your own thoughts, or you can fight. And you'll resonate with this in your space, but the will to fight sometimes is a very, very powerful thing. And all you need in that space is just a gut instinct. You just need that tiny little spark inside of you that's still there, that little flame, that little ember that's still burning, that says, come on, get up one more time, pick up your sword one more time. And that's what I did. I just refused to take no for an answer. And I refused that this was going to be their journey and their story. And I started to do my own research, took things into my own hands, sourced our own doctors, private specialists, and I just grit my teeth through the lack of sleep and just kept fighting. And through that journey, I was learning a lot about nutrition, a lot about gut health, and food for me became a source of empowerment. Obviously, on a physical level, when we eat better, and this is what I teach in the first responder space and the veteran space. Obviously, on a physical level, food is instant. When you eat a good meal, you feel good. When you eat a not so good meal, your body will let you know. So physically, we know it's very helpful. But from a mental health perspective, it gives you back something you can control.
Yeah.
And I was in a world where everything was outside of my control. and I needed hope, and I needed something that I could do for them at home. And so I did. And we eventually found a specialist down here in Perth who ran some blood tests that I'd been asking for a very, very long time, for 5 years. And she called me 2 days later and she said, "Your boys have a rare genetic immune disease. They're very sick. And we're going to advocate for them to start treatment straight away." And in that moment, there's just this sea of emotion, relief, validation, excitement that there was something we could do, fear that they'd been diagnosed with something serious, just everything. And over the years, with combination of everything I was doing for them with regards to healthy living, nutrition, you know, tox-free living, all of that, and the medical treatment that they got for their immune condition, they got better. And from that point, my own mental health had crashed. I had PTSD from all the medical trauma. I didn't know what that was. I only know that now, by the way. I
Yeah.
didn't at the time that that's what was going on because then, I was trying to catch up, a 5-year sleep deficit. My mental health was really not good at that point. And I remember before seeing that specialist having that first moment of going, if she doesn't help us, I think it's better that I'm not here.
Wow.
And so the journey that the boys and I went on once they started to get better, I threw myself into this work, into healing myself, into healing my own trauma from it. And we went on a journey of not just health and kind of, reclaiming our lives, but it was a big journey of forgiveness too. And so fast forward to today, they are 12 and 13. They're both at high, nearly 13, 14. They're both at high school. They are thriving. They're amazing. And they've actually been discharged from the system and from the condition that they were diagnosed with for life.
Wow. That's
So that's the
amazing.
story.
Yeah. Such a beautiful, not ending, but like where they're at now is incredible. That sounds so traumatic. And to push for 5 years for a blood test,
Yeah.
hard.
18 surgeries, multiple procedures. And
Yeah.
I'm saying, why are we not being referred to an immunologist? There's something wrong with their immune system. There's something wrong. And I was just told no at every turn. I was actually called in from a meeting with the pediatrics team at the hospital where we were living, right towards the end of all of this before I had taken it into my own hands. And I was called in and sat down thinking that we were there to talk about the boys. And they said, "Miss Wilson, we're not here to talk about your boys. We're here to talk about you. Have you heard of a condition called Munchausen by proxy?"
They did not.
They did.
Wow.
And that was my moment. And
That's
there are so many of those moments for so many people out there, whether your journey is as severe as mine, everybody's trauma and adversity is relative to them.
mm,
And you are given what feels like a breaking point, which is often the turning point. And it's what you do in that moment. For many people, that situation could lead them into some very unhealthy thoughts.
yeah. I've actually got tears in my eyes. Like as a mother, for someone like you're advocating so much for your children, but for someone to throw that back in your face to say that you were the one causing it,
Yeah.
that is incredible.
Yeah. The pain that I still feel from that moment is very real and very raw.
Yeah.
Um, However, I've done a lot of spiritual work, a lot over the last, 7 years. And forgiveness has been a huge, huge, huge part of that. And so for me, because now I tell our story on stages around Australia, around the world, for me, it's about what are we going to do with that adversity? Because the bitterness and the resentment and the anger will only keep you stuck.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that translates really well into the first responder space because there is a lot of embitterment and there is a lot of that vibe when you leave first responder agencies if you've been treated poorly. So that definitely translates across. And if you stay stuck, I've spoken to quite a few people and you can tell immediately if they're stuck in that embitterment. There's no growth there.
Mhm.
And it's such a hard thing to come out of, but it's so important that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. It just takes a greater understanding of, I think, adversity in general and how we can use our pain and turn it into power.
Yeah.
I had a beautiful kind of spiritual mentor once, and she told me that anger could be reframed as potency.
Mm.
All of these emotions that we feel, all of this adversity that we go through, it's all just energy, right? It invokes very deep feelings for us, but we can translate that energy into something useful and powerful. And I think the biggest thing that I always say to people is through your trauma and your adversity and your experiences, have a voice, speak it, teach your journey, find something in there that is a lesson that you can impart on other people as a part of your own healing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It is so healing to be able to, like you said, use your voice to help other people in their journeys. It's incredible. But I would love to talk about some food stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about food. Love food.
How did you come into working with first responders and veterans? Is there a family connection or is it just a passion?
No, here in Perth, I'm trying to think how I ended up in that space. Many years ago here in Perth, there's a program that's run, a PTSD program that's run by some very, very reputable doctors here in Perth that are really trying to make a difference in that space for police, nurses, veterans. And I must have met one of them at a function, I think, and got asked to speak on one of their very first programs. And I've done that program every month for 2 years now, going in and delivering these workshops to veterans and first responders that are healing from PTSD. And then from there, it's kind of just mushroomed because the more that we look at this space, as you'll know, the more we realize how much help is needed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I think this conversation is so important because there's so many elements to mental health and mental well-being and nutrition. And I'm sure you believe is so imperative to good mental health.
Oh, it absolutely is. I call it the biology and psychology. It's the chicken and the egg,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
One causing what, whether they're both, but they are interconnected. When a baby is in utero, the gut and the brain are one organ. And as the baby grows, one grows up and one grows down. And of course, they're connected by the vagus nerve. But the biology and psychology, for me, like I say, the mental health and physical health are so intrinsically linked. But where nutrition comes into it is not just the physical healing of making you feel better. Like I said, it really becomes a very powerful empowerment tool, discipline tool, self-love and devotion tool. Really when we look at it, because it's one of the few autonomous choices that we have left every day is what we eat.
Yeah.
And we make that decision. And the beautiful thing about it is if you make a poor choice, you get another chance a day. And then you get another chance. So for me in the mental health space, it's a very, very underutilized tool, as well as obviously gut brain health, physical healing, energy, and all the other things.
Just on gut brain, because it's a question that I have to ask. Can you just explain a little bit deeper into what the gut brain connection is? And you mentioned the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
I'm so interested in it. I've done so much reading. I find it so fascinating, that whole space. So if you could just give us a really quick but understandable description on how that works.
Absolutely. So, most people will know that saying the gut is the second brain. The human body actually has three brains: the brain, the gut, and the heart, right? So we have three. The gut-brain connection is the best way that I can describe it without going too much into the biology, because literally it is one's in your stomach, one's in your head, and then there's a highway that connects them. And I always say what goes up must come down. So whatever's happening in your gut will affect your brain. Whatever's happening in your brain will affect your gut. But we need practical examples of this for people to make that connection, right? The best way that I can describe it is, say, for example, you've gone out on the weekend and you've drunk too much alcohol and maybe you've eaten a pizza and a bunch of sugar, right? You wake up on a Monday morning and mentally you feel depressed, because we know that alcohol is a depressant. So you feel low mood and motivation. You feel foggy. Your brain is really foggy and clouded, but your gut also feels heavy
Yeah.
and slow. and sluggish, right? So there's a good example. Another example of it on the other end of the spectrum is think about a time, just talking to your viewers, think about a time where you've been highly, highly stressed, many of those, or in an adrenaline fueled situation, and you find yourself running to the bathroom a lot. And in addition to that, your bowels are very loose and are clearing, your hunger is shut down, you can't bring yourself to eat. And in addition to that, you're feeling very agitated and anxious. There's anxiety and hyper obsessive thoughts going on in your brain. So there's another example of how stress impacts the gut and the brain together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
The food that we eat, though, creates an internal environment in the gut that then impacts our moods. And the other thing just to note is that over 70, because I'm all about the happy hormones, like,
Yeah.
big, happy, joyful life. That's my catchphrase. That's what we all want, right? But 70% of your happy hormones, those neurotransmitters, your serotonin, all the things that make you feel really good, are made in the gut and
Yeah.
not in the brain.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for that. It gives us a good basis to start from. So with that, then how can the food that we eat support our mental health?
I can answer that for you.
Yeah.
In this space particularly, and the thing, what I'm going to tell you might surprise you, because when we talk about gut-brain connection, moods, energy, all of that, our minds often go to vegetables. We're like,
Yeah.
oh, I need to be eating more veggies for my gut health, right? Now, I'm a gut health girl. I'm all about the veggies. That's great. But there's actually a huge elephant in the room that is missing that we're not necessarily addressing. And the best way to get wins on the board with energy, mental health, cognition, sleep, moods, less bloating, all of that is protein, because 75% of the population is deficient in protein right now. Even people that are following the standard dietary recommendations for protein, those old, we know that that is not an optimal amount of protein for a human being, right? Every time we're eating high protein foods, we are getting 4 times the energy than we do from carbohydrate and sugar. So veggies and all of that are great, but I still see a lot of people going into that dieting space where they're eating a lot of plants and veggies, but they're not necessarily focusing on their protein intake. So the way that I explain it, and if I can jump into this, because it'd be
Yeah,
really helpful for
absolutely.
your community, okay? Let me explain it this way. I want you to imagine that your body is a fire, and it's your job to keep the fire burning every day. That fire is your metabolism. That is your energy center, right? And the single biggest thing that we all want more of is energy. Everything comes from there, whether it's mental energy or physical energy. It's that low state that, particularly from a mental health perspective, is no good, right? So if we imagine that our body is a fire, every single time we're putting foods with a high sugar or carbohydrate value on the fire, whether it's your, inverted commas, healthy foods like oats or bananas, and I say in inverted commas because we've really been sold a myth about that. So, or whether it's your bread, potato, pasta, sugar, up and go, muffins, chocolates, any of those foods in that space are like kindling for the fire. And when you put a bunch of kindling on the fire, because they're a 1-to-1 energy ratio, when you put a bunch of kindling on the fire, it's going to burn really quickly and go out. And that starts that blood sugar roller coaster, right? It's such a myth that carbohydrate and sugar gives us energy because it is so short and so unsustained, and the crash is so much bigger, right? So most of us are fueling our bodies with lots and lots and lots of kindling, okay? But now, if you think about a time that you've been out for brunch on the weekend and you've had a high protein brunch, eggs, sausages, bacon. I'm not suggesting everybody get up at 3 a.m. and cook that. But if you just think about the concept, right? How many times have you found yourself saying that breakfast kept me going all day?
Yeah.
Now we look at shift work. Now we look at alertness. Now we look at the fact that as a first responder, you could start shift with the best intentions for your meal times, and that might go out the window within 20 minutes. And you might not be able to eat for another 6 hours. And that's just the reality. I like to be really realistic in this space because I think a lot of people try to apply nutrition principles that are just not, that are appropriate for first responders, right?
Yeah.
If you have a log on the fire, so proteins and fats are a 1-to-4 energy ratio. They are like a log on the fire. And when you put a log on the fire, it's going to burn a lot more steadily. When you are burning at that steady rate rather than the blood sugar roller coaster, that's where we see the stabilization of the moods.
Yeah.
Because if your blood sugar is going up and down, your cortisol is going up and down, your hormones are going up and down, your moods, your energy, your hunger, you are just in stormy seas at that point. Whereas when your blood sugar is stable, by eating a lot more protein, everything else is more regulated because the body is not in a state of stress. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. I saw my psychologist this week, and like I've been in a bit of a state of like depression since January this year. And she said to me, eat more protein. And because something that happens to me, and I know it probably happens for a lot of people, especially during depressive episodes, is that my appetite is non-existent.
Yes.
And like I said to you before, I love food. I was a chef before I joined the co-op. So I have veggie garden, herbs, like I make my own sourdough, the whole bit. I love food so much. And I think another layer on that for me and having zero appetite is I have zero desire to be creative as well. So it really like sucks pretty much when I have these, and I only eat usually in front of the kids so they don't worry. But she said to me the other day, I said, look, I am actually making a concerted effort to eat more because I just know that I have to fuel my body. And she's like, eat more protein, eat more protein. Okay.
So your neurotransmitters are actually synthesized from amino acids.
Yeah.
Okay. Right? That is what builds them. So if you're trying to rewire your brain, regrow parts of your brain, recalibrate your brain, those are the raw materials, right? And the interesting thing is, because you said, that the complexity of meals can be difficult for you when you're in that state. But what? A good grass-fed steak cooked in butter and salt, it tastes damn good.
It's so good.
And I don't know about you, but I don't like my steak overcooked. So it's literally 6 minutes, 3 minutes aside. You could be eating it in 8 minutes, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you can do that for breakfast. And people think, oh my gosh, I'm crazy. But getting back to whole animal proteins and the way that we were designed to eat them, I'm not anti-carb, I'm not anti, and I'm very pro-veggie, but protein is the elephant in the room that we are missing.
Yeah. So with that then, for someone that maybe like still working, let's say a shift worker, what is something that they can eat at the start of the shift that will keep them going for, a few good hours if they get stuck at a job or?
Yeah, talk about ability to cook versus not having the ability to cook.
Yeah,
I think that's big because some of the suggestions that I give, people are like, whoa, depending on start of shift and, that sort of thing. So let's assume that you're going into night shift and you have an hour before you go. I'm not saying cook for an hour, but you have that time. Okay.
right.
Gold standard of what I would suggest is something like 3 eggs, a handful of cooked chicken, and some broccoli as a scramble. That's going to give you your fat. It's high protein. It's great fiber. That is like the perfect example of a log on the fire. Cook it in some healthy fat, right? So like a chicken and egg scramble with broccoli. Okay. Now let's say that you're starting shift at 8 in the morning and you don't really like a cooked breakfast, but you know that you need to get something in. So something at that point, I'd be doing like a low carb protein smoothie that you could load. So you could be doing like frozen berries, chia seeds, protein powder, avocado for your fats, some veggies for fiber. You can kind of get a meal in a smoothie and you can grab it with you as you go out the door.
Yeah.
So that would be an example. For people that are super time poor or you're having to eat on shift, obviously there's things like your cans of tuna with some seed crackers. You can buy the pre-cooked chicken. It's not amazing, but it's probably better than having crackers. What I personally do, there's a company called Chief Nutrition where I get all my protein powders and my protein snacks. I'll give you a code for your community. So I have
Great.
a code. But for me personally, they do these beef brisket bars and they do collagen protein bars. They're all super clean. I'm often traveling on the run, up early, and a 30-gram breakfast, 30-gram protein is non-negotiable for me at some point of the morning. Could be at 9, could be at 10, could be at 7, just depends on the day. And I'll just have 2 of those on the go, and that will give me my 30 grams. So I'm a big fan of people going, what I talk about this a lot in my PTSD workshops. What is your capacity for change?
Yeah.
Because we have a perception that healthy eating is hard. It's lots of cooking. It's lots of prep. And it's not a time issue. It's a bandwidth issue,
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
right? It's that we all have 5 minutes in the morning, but we do not have the bandwidth for something new when we are navigating a mental health journey.
Yeah.
Just something as simple as a good quality protein powder and just have a shake. So you just get your 30 grams in 3 times during the shift.
Yeah.
Is it nutritionally amazing? I mean, I guess it's not perfect, but it's so much better than not having it.
Better than a Mars bar.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's
Which,
right. And
yeah.
I'm working with in my VIP coaching, because I do private coaching. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 first responders in there at moment, from police, fiery, and 2 ED nurses. I do males and females. And we're just workshopping like achievable ways to get it in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. And that's such a great point. The bandwidth or the capacity
Totally.
to make the change, because
Yeah.
it is a roller coaster. And
Yeah.
the bandwidth at times, like, it really does peak and
It
drop.
really is. So you want to have, I call them your gold, silver, and bronze, like those meals that I'm just, let's start the other way. Let's start with the bronze. And that's going to be like your protein powder, your protein bar. The Chief Nutrition ones at least are clean. I love them because they're clean, and you can actually get like jerky bars. So it's not necessarily sugar. So you'd start there just with like a straight convenience option, but it's still got 30 grams of protein. And then once your bandwidth expands and you're feeling a bit of an energy boost from that protein and the fog is starting to clear, you can move into doing a protein shake or smoothie or something. And then you can move into doing some kind of a cooked breakfast or frittata, bacon and egg muffins, that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's so great. Thank you so much for that. So we did talk about, and um, I loved how you said this, that your own experiences by not being heard and being medically gaslit. And like we said, that's something that a lot of people in this space feel as well, whether it's by medical practitioners or insurers even. There's a lot of input from other people. How can we start backing ourselves or using our agency and food as a form of self-advocacy and self-care?
Yeah, I love that. I have a favorite saying that says discipline is devotion. And discipline is something that's not new to your listeners. That's the reason why they're in that space, right? So, the very first thing that I would say to people is get back in the driver's seat of your life and your health. Do not sit as a passenger in the Uber, because this is another one of my favorite sayings. I have so many. Until you take responsibility for your life, someone else is running your life.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. Until
Yeah.
you take responsibility for your life, someone else is running your life. And I don't know about you, but I can be a bit of a control freak sometimes if that doesn't sit well with me. And you can replace the word life with health,
Yes.
body, nutrition, exercise, until you take responsibility. So that's the first thing. The second thing, you asked about backing yourself in, all right? We have the most powerful thing in the world, and it is called a gut instinct. It's not woo woo, it's not spiritual, it's very science backed. Your body has an innate wisdom that is your own inbuilt computer system. And the reason why your community knows this exists is because of the way that they perform in extreme pressure situations and the defaults that their body will go to get them out of danger, right?
Yeah.
We have that. And if you have a burning feeling, gut feeling, niggle about something, right? You are your own most powerful authority. You know your body, your situation, your life, your work more than anyone. So we have to learn to trust ourselves before we trust the system.
Yeah.
Right? We want to trust the system and trust our peers and trust people around us, but we have to rebuild that trust with ourselves. And where your physical health comes into that is that in Maslow's, in the hierarchy of needs, that triangle, right?
Yeah.
The bottom layer, the physical layer, your physical health is what says to your nervous system, I am secure. So when your nervous system is out of balance, the more stable your physical health, the more secure you're going to be. Okay. So then, in terms of using things like nutrition, everything starts with what's on the end of your fork. Because every time you eat, every single time you put something in your mouth, two things are going to happen. The first thing is that food is either going to be converted into energy or it's going to be converted into toxic waste. Yeah. Those are the only two avenues. So you're either energizing your body or toxifying your body. So that's the first thing, right? So food is an energy tool. The second thing is the food that you eat speaks louder to your subconscious than words ever could. So every time you eat something, you are sending a very powerful message to your subconscious that says, I'm showing up for you today or I'm not, right?
Yeah.
And we know strong in the body, strong in the mind. So we use nutrition as a tool to get stronger and stronger and stronger in the body, which makes us stronger and stronger and stronger in the mind. And when we are strong in the body and when our mental health starts to get stronger, then we can use our voice.
Yeah. I love that.
Because we won't communicate from a small version of ourselves. When we're playing small and we're hiding in a body that's inflamed or, carrying excess weight or not feeling good, and when we're deep in our own mental health, we won't speak from that place. We won't lead. We won't advocate. But when we're strong and when we're open and when we're clear and when we're bright and when we're authentic and we're confident in ourselves, we'll lead and we'll speak from that place. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm in my own one-on-one masterclass that I just get to share with other people. So great.
Coaching with Jess. You didn't know you signed up for it, but there you go. Do you feel motivated?
I'm so motivated. I'm going to go make some eggs. Thank you so much for that. So the other thing is like hormones and stress and nutrition, like that. Like I'm learning a lot more about hormones. I'm in my early 40s now, so it's something that I'm sort of taking a little bit more consideration of as well. And then, I've got PTSD, so there's something there. And there's a few little things I think that in my body now are sort of working together, but affecting me in different ways. So especially for women, because it's something that we deal with at this sort of age in our late 30s, And it's so wild to me how food can either support or totally throw us back in relation to that as well. Can you unpack how chronic stress with our hormone health and how we can start to use nutrition to bring ourselves back into some sort of balance with that as well?
So first thing that you said was women in our 40s are experiencing.
Yeah,
So let's start by normalizing that.
absolutely.
By bringing that conversation to the table and saying that on any given day, your body is recalibrating and changing at the rate of knots. Hormones are doing things. We are in reverse puberty. I'm 44 one day. You're in reverse puberty, and that's how many years you're going to go through it for. But there's so much education and weight and support that's placed on our teenage girls in this space now, but not so much for perimenopause. Okay. So the very first thing is just acknowledgement that I think, and starts with self-acknowledgement. Wake up in the morning. I do this with all my female clients. Mini self-check-in. When you're in the shower, when you bring your coffee, how am I feeling today? Where are we at? What do we need? She goes, oh, well, I'm feeling a bit sensitive, or I'm feeling a bit sad, or I'm feeling quite tired, or I'm feeling like I could conquer the world, or what, just check in and no judgment. Go, okay, I got you. That's the first thing. The second thing is understanding when it comes to hormones that going through wild swings in perimenopause is actually not normal. We've normalized it as a culture and a society, but it's actually not normal. So, come and see me, get your hormones checked. We can figure it out. The third thing is, and this is where it's so relevant in the first responder space and your audience, right? The master controller of all hormones in your body, your sex hormones, your female hormones, your energy hormones, your blood sugar hormones, your metabolism, your thyroid, your hunger, all of that, your happy hormones, all of that is hormones, right? The master controller of that is your brain. Okay. So your brain is sending the signals to every organ to say what to produce and when, or what to clear and when. And so in cases of shift work, extreme stress, PTSD, mental health, or just, just chronic daily stress, your brain is receiving that input on a regular basis. It's prioritizing the stress response to keep you balanced and safe, and it's shutting the reproductive function down. It's not balancing your perimenopausal
We don't have time for like,
big meltdown that day, because it's like we are dealing with a car crash right now, or
yeah,
is a car crash right now, or we are dealing with, because remember, for a lot of first responders, particularly if you've been in the job a long time, you are likely stuck in sympathetic dominance, or you're likely stuck in that stress space because you've been living there for so long, right? So your brain, as the master controller of all of these hormones, is so heavily influenced by stress, whether it's direct or whether it's perceived stress, that it will stop sending those messages or regulating your sex hormones, because that is just simply not a priority, right? The best example of that is, as you hit perimenopause, your progesterone starts to decline naturally. Okay. Progesterone is our feminine. She's our nurturing, she's our loving, she's our soft, she's our trust, our safety, our warm, our loving, our come let me cook for you. And that already is a part of us as women, that when you're in a very hypermasculine role or a very stressful role in your job, that is already something that's affected and shut down.
mm,
Okay. So I teach this a lot in this space. And as you hit perimenopause, that starts to decline. What that looks like is anxiety, irritability, loud noises, somebody talking to you while the TV is on, irritation, agitation, right? And all your 40-plus-year-old women are going to be, oh my God,
yeah.
that's me.
We just ticked all of the boxes in
All
my
the
head.
boxes,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, stop talking to me, right? And so a lot of that we put in the mental health bucket, or PTSD or anxiety, but a lot of it is hormonal.
Yeah.
Okay. So where we can start to use nutrition and self-care practices to rebalance these hormones and progesterone and that sort of thing is, obviously the better you eat, the less estrogen dominant you'll be, so the less angry you'll be, right?
Yeah.
But progesterone needs fuel. She needs healthy fats. She needs protein. She needs quality carbs at times, but she also needs stillness.
Mm,
She needs self-care. She needs that space. So and I'm talking about it from the brain's perspective. So anytime you have the ability, anytime, to go into a more still space in your nervous system, connect with your body, even if you're in a very, very high performing role, you can do this at times, and just let her know that she's safe. That message from your brain will be sent to where it needs to go. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. That's such a great answer, because I know, like myself, but there's so many women in our age group that, people that I talk to especially, have the mental health stuff, but also now are dealing with the hormonal stuff. So it's so important, I think, to have conversations and normalize that as well, as a contributing factor to the whole body.
Definitely. And please also understand that the woman of our generation, and particularly in your field of work, our nervous systems, or your nervous systems, are dealing with things that women in previous generations have never had to deal with. Okay. And also, and I say this with respect, I'm a strong, independent woman, but also that a woman's body is not designed to handle this load. Yet here we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my point about that is that the hormonal issues that we are facing as 40-year-old women in perimenopause are different to our mothers and our grandmothers. And that the narrative has always been that we'll just kind of sail through it, or everyone goes through it, or I went through it too. I don't think it's the same.
Yeah.
I think the way that we are going through perimenopause and menopause in this generation, in this day and age, is vastly worse as a result of our stressful lives, environment, and work schedules.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, for sure. We've got a lot more going on. Yeah. Something that I just didn't want to spring on you is some
Yeah.
5 takeaways or practical or doable steps, because it's so important. I think in this space, with this conversation especially, people need some doable, achievable things that they can implement straight away. So
Okay.
if someone's listening right now, they're feeling stressed or anxious, what are your top 5 ways to start supporting yourself nutritionally that's not overwhelming?
All right. Amazing. So some of them are going to be nutrition and some of them are not, but they
Right.
paint a picture of
Yeah.
leading you to better health choices. Because I think a lot of us know what to eat. We know we got to eat protein and veggies is like the staple of our diet, but I just can't seem to do it.
Yes.
I can't get control of it. I keep falling off the wagon. That's the narrative, right? Okay, awesome. So these are my 5. The very, very, very first thing is set your alarm clock at the same time every day. And I know that sounds crazy, but your morning ritual, and you will know this in that first responder veteran space, your morning ritual is everything. And sometimes it's all you've got.
I agree. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Set your alarm at the same time every day because that sets the intention for discipline for the day. Okay. Whether you get out of bed and exercise, whether you get out of bed and have a cup of tea, or whether you just get out of bed and sit there like a deer in headlights and go, what's going to happen today? Start with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because often people who come to me and say, I can't seem to eat a good breakfast or I can't seem to exercise in the morning are also snoozing 10 times. All right. So start with that morning ritual. And I call it a ritual because a habit is something that we feel we have to do. A ritual is something we look forward to. Okay. So you set your alarm at the same time every day. The next thing you're going to do is hydrate. Water before coffee, 400 mils of warm lemon water. And this is where the ritual comes in. So you might set your alarm. It's winter. You jump out of bed, put your dressing gown on, and just, or whatever it is, and just stand there with a cup of warm lemon water and just breathe into your day. Such a simple thing. Okay. But water before coffee. The third thing is increase your protein intake in the morning. 30 grams of protein in one of those 3 ways that we listed, that is going to make the biggest difference to your 3 p.m. crash or your 11 a.m. crash. So find a way that feels achievable to you to get that protein in the morning. Even if you're having a protein shake alongside your coffee as you run out the door, don't skip the 30 grams of protein. So that's my third one. So set your alarm, morning ritual, hydrate with warm lemon water, 30 grams of protein in the morning, even if it's convenience. The next thing for me is really around daily steps. I think that's a big one because the more sedentary we are from a mental health perspective, it's not great. So daily steps is a big one. It doesn't have to be exercise. Don't have to even put your active wear on. Just walk outside right now in whatever shoes you're wearing and just walk to the end of the street and back. And then my last one would be for people from a nutrition perspective, we really want to be getting 30 to 50 grams of fiber a day. So a lot of people might have tried healthy eating where they even have increased their protein intake or they've reduced their carb. But I see a lot of people eating like lettuce, tomato, cucumber. Your brassica veggies, particularly for women, are very, very, very high fiber. Broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, floors, that sort of thing. They really, really help with the hormone balance and the detoxification and keeping you full for longer and weight loss. So if there was a magic diet that I would give to people who were on the run and they didn't have time to cook and they were just wanting to do better, I would say get some of these convenience protein snacks, right? And then go to Coles or Woolies, get some tuna or a pre-cooked chicken and a bag of raw slaw, right? Super easy, and just eat that. And you will feel a phenomenal difference from doing that versus your processed snacks, your breads, your pastas, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Those raw slaws, I've just found them because I love like spinach and rocket and all the green stuff, but
Yeah,
I've found those as well. And I've been chucking them into all our family salads. I'm like, this is so good and convenient.
totally. Yeah, they're
And good for you.
pre-chopped.
Yeah.
Yeah. People think I'm Martha Stewart in the kitchen. I am not. Like, I am so busy that there's always the arguments around organic or quality, but we are trying to meet people where they're at.
Absolutely.
And when people are battling mental health or they're battling lack of sleep or they're battling shift work and they're battling stress, those sorts of suggestions of making a 3-course meal, it's not achievable. But what can we do?
Yeah. Let's bust open that bag of raw slaw.
Yeah, raw slaw, can of tuna, a little bit of hummus, off you go. And, I think the great thing about your community is that often people don't mind eating the same thing over and over because it takes away the decision fatigue.
Yes. 100%. Like I found myself when I was working as a cop, I would have the exact same thing every single shift for years. Like
Yeah,
it was like chicken, green veggies. I'd have some snacks of broad beans, and it would be the exact same thing absolutely for years. I was doing that and it was great because I didn't have to think about it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's just whatever you do, the best diet in the world is the one you're gonna stick to.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. But as long as protein is the hero, followed by fiber, meat and veggies in their original form, and just get it in.
Yeah. Thank you so much. The top 5, set your alarm, get your water in, get your 30 grams of protein in the morning, your daily steps, move your body, and 30 to 50 grams of fiber. It's so achievable for people.
Yeah,
And to actually, people can make a little checklist, and just make sure
definitely.
they're
And
getting it.
lose attachment to anything else.
And I think,
It,
Vim, what you said at the start, you get another chance
yeah,
every time. So if you mess up, it's no messing up. You just try again.
that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Leave it, you put it behind you and you just you focus on the next meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such great advice. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and knowledge in the area.
Thank you, Rosie. You're so welcome.
Such a joy. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any new ones. We release fresh content every Tuesday. And while you're there, take a moment to leave us a review. I would genuinely appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget to connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Tactical Yoga Australia and share this episode with your friends, family, and workmates to spread inspiration. Your support means the world. My name is Rosie Skeen. Join me again next week for another empowering and positive episode of Triumph Beyond Trauma. Until then, be kind to your mind and trust in the magic of your consistent and positive efforts. Triumph beyond your trauma is closer than you think. Have the best week.